Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us at your lunchtime on a Tuesday. We still have people trickling in, so we will get started in just about 2 minutes. If you'll hold on just a second. We've been having some technical difficulties and apologize for being late, but like I said, we'll be ready to go in just about 2 minutes, so hold on. We'll be with you. Good morning, everybody. I guess afternoon now. Thank you for tuning in today. I hope to get through this fairly quickly because the material we'll be talking about is not new. We went over a lot of it just a couple months ago, but we do need everyone to be on the same page and get ready because we've got maybe a week or so before we'll be ready to offer spots to families who have applied online. And while it's been a lower volume this year than last year due to the ongoing situation of the world, we do have a number of families who have applied to various centers, and we would like to be able to accommodate them. So we would like to be able to move forward shortly here in order to let parents know that we still remember them and would love to serve them. So a few housekeeping notes before we start. I'm Craig Zemke at the City of Chicago. Most of you probably know that. At the end of this webinar, you'll see my email address is there. That'll be the best way to contact me with follow-up questions because although I'm in the building today and not broadcasting from the underground bunker this time, most of the time I'm still working at home, so my city phone number will not be a good match, but I get my email every day. All of you who are logged in, there are quite a few of you now, that is gratifying. But all of you who are logged in are currently on mute. There is a question box that you can see. It'll be in the lower right-hand panel of your screen if you open up the webinar information piece. You can type in a question. I'll answer them at a couple times during the presentation, but for the most part, we'll wait for those that will handle them after each section and at the end, because I'm hopeful that many of your questions will be covered as we go through the presentation. So with that said, there will be a CSD update going out tomorrow. The PowerPoint from this should be included. We also have a manual from COPA that we had hoped to attach to the presentation today, but as I say, we're having technical problems. So that will likely end up going out with tomorrow's CSD update as well. Okay, having covered all of the, basic housekeeping stuff, let's go. We are here today because it is time for us to get ready to offer placement to the families who have applied online for the CEL Universal Application. As you remember, on May 21st, we opened up the application for parents to put their information in and apply, but we haven't offered anybody a seat yet. So today, our goal is to make sure that all of you out there are prepared to use the admin module within COPA to set up the slots, identify your returning children so that you are able to offer slots. We need to know how many, because what we do not want is people applying who can't participate. So we're going to go through next year's setup briefly because we did that last time. And we're going to go through how we're going to set up the slot allocation matrix this year. Again, it's in COPA admin. If the people who are on this webinar are not the admin users for your site, when we send out the information tomorrow, we need to get it to those people because you need to have admin access in order to set up and prepare the application. Okay, So this next week, there's an aggressive timeline, but there's not a lot to do. As you'll see when we go through it, it's really very simple. Figuring out what the numbers are maybe is not that simple, but the actual process of setting this up in COPA is not difficult. So the two things that need to happen: returning children need to be identified. I noticed about a third of the children in the system have already been identified since the last webinar. That's pretty good, actually. If the other 2/3 now, we can go in and decide where they're going next year. We'll be good to go. So again, here's a calendar. On May 21st, we open the application. We've had people apply. So there are applicants, first choice and second choice applicants all over the place to, I said, the vast majority of agencies and sites in the city, at least a few. So now we need to set up the next year's slots. That means identifying what the capacity is likely to be, and also how many children are returning, so that we have some idea of how many spots we have available to give out. We can't offer anybody a slot until we know how many kids we are being funded to serve, how many we have the license capacity to serve, and so on. So we were aiming to offer spots in mid-July. That would be next week, possibly Wednesday, but we haven't really nailed that down, but very soon. So we need you guys to set up the back end of this so that we can move forward. And then these slots we're talking about are for next year. So we are going to roll over the day after Labor Day, the way we always do, which is late this year. It's not until September 8th. So I think I figured out that we have 9 or 10 weeks to go before the next program year, which I know that summer just started, but really from our point of view, operationally, that just doesn't seem like a long time anymore. So, okay, this is a review. I had this in there last time, but you can look at in COPA at report 976 to see if the CEL profile, this is the description of your agency that the public can see on the website, is correct. So just periodically make sure if there are changes to that. It's not going to really change unless you tell us to update it. So make sure periodically just look at that and let us know if it's not correct. Okay, now to set up the site, you must be an admin user. I'm going to go through this really quickly because we did this before, but you do need to know we are guessing about how many slots we have available right now based on your class profiles. So you can edit those if those change or incorrect. So in COPA admin, when you first log in, you've got the name of the site. You click through that, you get the classes, you get the edit arrow there. And this is where a lot of this information is. As you look over on the left-hand side, you can see we have class capacity and several different places. We're asking about a couple of these things, as I said before, and we'll continue to say so everyone knows this. Serving preschool-aged children means please put me on the universal application. That's a big one right now. See? So by marking your classes with that flag, you will see there will be the count of capacity will show up on the matrix. That's not necessarily the number you will use, but it's very helpful information for you to figure out what you will put in there. Okay, so we have instruction language, funding sources. This is not really, this is here because I'm sending it out to you. We're not really going to cover this today, but again, with your funding for your classroom has changed, and a lot of people's funding has recently changed, both in December and then again last week. Make sure that the classes are updated to reflect the actual current funding sources. Okay. So here is where the first place we're putting in class capacity is in that classroom profile. So basically that's just your DCFS funded capacity. And again, this isn't directly feeding the application, but when you set up your slots, it will show you the sum of all of these classes. That's an easy way to tell how many spots COPA thinks that you have. For now, this should be set to your normal license operating capacity, not to the smaller class size restrictions that have been imposed by the state during the COVID-19 crisis. Remember that this application is not about how many children can be enrolled there today, is allowing people to apply for slots in the fall. And we are not entirely certain when we'll move to a different phase, what our capacity and our ability to serve people will be, obviously. But for now, we're going to allow people to apply. There haven't been enough applicants right now that I'm terribly worried about overbooking, but we would like some data on who wants to come, who's applied, who's eligible, who's returning, so that we can make decisions if we have to. So if we're not able to give a spot to everyone that we offer one to, more guidance will be coming to you later. But as I said, it is a couple months in the future, and we are hoping the situation will be somewhat different by that time. So again, for children to enroll off of the universal application, the classroom age should be 3 to 5. There are also options for birth to 3 and for school age. Please don't leave that blank for any classroom. It makes it difficult for us to decide all kinds of things. How many teachers should there be? What are the qualifications? Everything. We had this added on purpose. This is a customization to COPA that we asked for so that we can make it easier to manage a program this large. So please fill it out. Okay, so the next step, once you have your classrooms identified and set up, is to decide how or who is returning in the fall. And again, I understand this is a difficult, strange time. So we may not be entirely certain who is returning. Take your best guess at this. The worst thing that happens if you think someone is returning and they're not is that you later unmark them, and then someone from the waiting list can enroll. On the other hand, if you don't identify your returning children and then they come back, you could have capacity problems in the fall. So make sure to do this. If you do not know whether a family is returning, but based on their age, they could be, I would mark them at this point, and then if they tell you later they're not returning, you can unmark them. Okay. So if you see, here's the admin screen on the screenshot. Down in the left-hand corner, there's a section called pre-rollover activity, and the child next to your preparation is the first line there. So when you go through here, again, you'll see a list of all the children who are enrolled currently. And then you see there are radio buttons to the right that say returning, recertify, and archive. And those things mean put them on the waiting list, put them on the eligible list, or send them to the archive. Now, when you check these buttons and submit it, it doesn't do anything right now. This is what will happen on September 8th. But don't be alarmed by that yet. Okay. So COPA, if you'll notice, has made default selections based on the child's age. You can change these, and you should change them before going forward because COPA makes some assumptions that may not be true. Pretty much everyone who is a 4-year-old this year and is going to be 5 next year, COPA will guess that they're going to the archive and check that box. But if they're returning to a school-age program, for example, you would want to change that and not necessarily archive. So people who are returning to the same program next year, so they were in preschool for all this year, they're returning to preschool for all classrooms, should be set as returning. Recertify is for children who are changing their program, because this will put them back on the waiting list so you can re-enroll them in a different program with a new start date. So this would be your children who are in early Head Start now, but who have turned 3 and will be going into a Head Start room in the fall, for example. Everybody, regardless of age, who says they're not coming back, we could set them up to archive, and we can bring them back if they do show up, but that way they get out of the waiting list, or they don't spend time on the eligible accepted list if they're not going to go anywhere. Okay. So the next thing is, when you set this up, make sure before you hit submit to check the box next to the children who you want processed. Every time I do this, every single year, I forget to do that. And so I set everything up and I hit submit, and absolutely nothing happens, and I have to do it all over again. So I'm telling you that so you cannot be me and do this right the first time. The next thing, and this has changed since last year, so this is like the most important thing for you to process today. A box has been added to identify returning children. So instead of hitting submit and then having it ask if you want to set flags or not, it's got the box here. This is confusing, or this was confusing before because you didn't know which children were being marked and not, if it just said, do you want to set flags? So here, you can check the box next to the child's name. You set the status and then whether or not you want to mark them as returning. Now, this only works at the site level. So if we have a multi-site agency and you're trying to set everyone up, you can't mark returning children at that level. So you have to filter down and do one site at a time, and then you will be able to flag these children as returning. The reason it's so important to do this will be clear in a minute, but essentially the returning children get subtracted from your total space count to let us know how many slots are still available. So you see here, once you've submitted them, they disappear from the enrolled child list, and they're on the returning back to eligible list. Our goal to be able to go forward is to get all of the children off of the enrolled children list. So there's no one there. And here on the returning list, you'll see them here, you'll see them in the certify, you'll see them in archive. But that enrolled child list should be empty. So everybody should have a status next year, and you can change it. Like, you may not know right now, but you can change it if you get it wrong. See here, on each of those sites, the archive list, the returning list, and so on, there's a column that says back to enrolled list. You check the button and you hit submit, and then they go back to that list. And if you put them on the wrong one, you can change it. So it's not final. Like I said, nothing happens to the children until September 8th. We just want the flags now so that we know how many we can count as returning. So that's the next piece, is setting up the slot matrix, which, again, I know this is a short time. I'd love to see this done in a week if at all possible. But it's not, if you've already done the other pieces that I told you about, it's not terribly difficult. It's really not. You go into the admin, you click right here, site slots allocation by eligibility points, which is what we call this slot matrix, because nobody wants to say site slots allocation by eligibility points. I've just said it twice. It was difficult. So the first thing you do is you want to make sure that it's set up for next year. You should already have slots for the current year. Some sites were not on the application last year, and so don't have a current year matrix, but most of the sites do. Either way, you got to make sure we are setting up next year's now. You still have current year. If you did, you can still enroll children during the current year, but that's not what this application is for. So Right now, we have 2 years going at once. You can apply to this year, you can apply to next year, and there's 2 separate sets of slots. So for each site you're setting up, you first check the box that says check to offer slots. You see that way in the left-hand side. And then on the right, it's got the applicable PIR range. For now, this application is for children 3 to 5-year-olds. In my not so copious spare time, I have been beta testing the application for birth to 3. So that is coming. It's hopefully coming very soon. The issues that we have with it are minor. So I'm hoping that very soon you will be able to get a CSD update that will tell you when and how we're rolling out an application for birth to 3. But today we're talking about 3 to 5. So you're going to put 3 to 5 in there and check to offer slots. And here, under the total slots column, this is the total number of available seats for 3 to 5-year-old children, including both returning and new. So again, assume this is your total license capacity. If it continues to be limited for health reasons, we'll give you further guidance as September approaches. But for now, if you've got classrooms for 3 to 5-year-olds and they're licensed for 20 kids, they're licensed for 17, whatever, that's the number you put in there. So if you have 3 classrooms that can fit 17, what is that, 51, 54? I should have done. You got 3 classrooms that fit 20 kids, you put 60 in there. There you go. I'm too tired for math. Note that COPA has already made a guess about the number of seats. You see that down there, it says site capacity. That is the sum of the capacity in all of the classrooms that you have that are marked serving preschool-aged children. So if you look at this and that's wrong, you can actually click that link and see which classrooms COPA has identified, and you can go in and fix it. So this is a good check. These numbers should be the same, but if they're not, you can fix it. There we go. So you hit submit, and then you have to go back and select the site again. By default now that we've told it that we have 20 slots, it's placed all those slots to start out with in slot 5, which is the slot that's reserved for families from the highest need families, homeless children, foster children, and so on. So, but you notice here, we put 20 slots in, and it's placed 17 in slot 5. Why is that? It's because 3 children were marked as returning in the last section that we looked at. So the system automatically subtracts those. So you don't have to do that math yourself, thank goodness. Instead, you just put the total slots in. If you've marked the returning children, the system will subtract it for you. Okay, to modify this to allow higher income children to enroll, so not everyone has to be in the highest need bucket, you would then distribute your slots into the other bucket. So here what I'm doing, if you look on the screen, I've taken 10 slots and given them to slot 4 and 5 to slot 3. When we refresh that, it will then take those out of the 17. So again, 5 is the homeless. It means very, very high need. Slot 4 is children whose family income is below the federal poverty. So you are offering slots only for Head Start. Almost all of them should be in slot 4 because those children are Head Start eligible. And then as it goes in declining order, so the lower the number, the higher the income. And slot 1 does not have an income restriction. So if you are letting people apply online and taking private pay families whose income is over 200% federal poverty, you'll put slots in slot 1. Now, the system has a waterfall effect, meaning that if you're high need, you can take any available slot. Whereas if you are in a lower bucket, you can get slots up to your level of eligibility. But like I said, slot 4 is the federal poverty line, basically. So a family that's over poverty could get a spot if there's one available in bucket 1, 2, or 3, but not in 4 or 5. This is ensuring that preference is given to families with higher needs. And that's one of the goals of the application and part of the reason for the entire system. Note that when you mark people as returning, they effectively come out of slot 5. What I mean by that is if you set up your buckets first and then mark someone as returning, for example, you enroll a new child next week and they want to come back in the fall, so you check the returning box on their file. They have whatever slot they have this year, but effectively, because they're a returning child next year, the number in bucket 5 will go down because you don't set that. The system calculates that automatically. So if you are expecting families to enroll between now and September and start being served before September, you need to leave space for them in bucket 5. So do not give all of your spots away to lower needed buckets. The reason for that is that if bucket 5 is 0 and then you enroll another returning child, it becomes -1, which is a big problem. We can't have negative numbers in here. Okay. So you would hit submit and select your site again. As you see, COPA reduced the slot. This used to be 17, now it's 2, because here are the other 15. Again, if this 3 became a 4, then this 2 would become a 1. So effectively, you want to make sure you have slots there. This is not a task that you should do once right now and then never look at it again. Instead, you should go back periodically through the rest of the summer and update it. So if you have more children that enroll now and are set up as returning, you need to go in and lower the number of slots for next year in buckets 1 through 4, because those have now effectively been taken by the new children. Okay. So if you've done that, you're ready to accept children through the platform. So I'm going to take a few questions right now. Make this pop out. The first one here, are they doing this just for 3 to 5 children now? Are they doing this for all children? The new returning children column, are they to only mark this to children 3 to 5 years old? I would go ahead and mark these for all children. Set up your birth to 3-year-olds as well. The reason for that is, as I mentioned, we don't have a birth to 3 app right now, but I'm beta testing it. It exists, you just can't see it yet. But we are hoping to bring that to you very soon. We're almost done with it. So go ahead and mark everyone returning. Just do everybody, and then you'll have less work to do later. Okay, the next one is, has the income been fixed to allow for PFA families to be listed in COPA? PFA families can be listed in COPA. They always have been. So I'm not sure what that refers to. I think that refers to people trying to enroll children using the pre-qualified families list. And you put the information in and it says they're not eligible. I've asked people, and I'll continue to do so, don't use the pre-qualified family. Just don't. No, we're not going to fix it. Don't enroll from that link. Okay, because the system is set up to have multiple eligibility criteria based on multiple program models, multiple funding sources. So you just need to put them into the recruitment module or put them in on the waiting list, adding them to a family file through the regular application, something like that. But do not try to pre-qualify them. Just don't. It doesn't work, and no, we're not going to fix it. We don't want you to use that link. Because we would actually prefer that you use the recruitment module, because you can put a duplicate in there and they can get an offer. So even if the child was enrolled somewhere else, if you use the recruitment module, then you can occupy a spot and hold a spot for them while we get you the file. Okay, here's another one. PFA children has always been marked as over income. But yeah, that's on the waiting list. You know what you can do? There is a customized link for the waiting list. Remove the income status field from your report and add, I think it's income as percentage of FPL, and it'll be clearer. So that field has been replaced, but it's on the default field. Having it mark over income does not stop you from enrolling them if they're eligible for the program needed. Each program has a different level of eligibility points that vaguely corresponds to the buckets that we were just talking about. So to enroll in PFA, a child only needs 95 points. To enroll in Head Start, they need 210. So that's how the system keeps track. There's not one field that tells you whether they're eligible or not, because it depends on what the funding source you've set up for them. Yeah, so if we enroll a family now, we have to mark them as returning so that they're counted in bucket 5. Yes, absolutely. If you enroll a child today and you're expecting them to stay in the program and be here on September 8th and beyond, that child should be marked as returning so that the system does not give their seat to another applicant. Until you mark them as returning, it doesn't know they're coming. Because it's got there's a list of slots. There's a capacity calculation being done right now for the 2019-2020 year. So again, we're still in. So this is still 2019 in COPA. So it'll take those 2019 slots and offer them a place right now. But if they're coming back in the fall, they need to be on that grid too. So we need to reserve a seat for them. And that's what the returning box does. How can we check if the returning flags have been set if we've already identified returning children prior to this webinar? Good question. And the answer is, when you look at, here, let me go back, if I can go back here, just a second. You can see better than I can right now, actually. You see under returning slots, here's the number 3 there. This is just a PowerPoint, so I can't show you, but in COPA, if you click on that number, you will get a list of names. So those are the children whose returning flags have been set. So if you're expecting someone to return, but you look at that list and they're not on a list, you need to go back and set the flag. If you did this, like I said, about a third of the children were processed. If you did this after the previous webinar and went in there and marked them as returning, they should be flagged. We set up, it wasn't working in all cases last year, but we set up the new page very shortly after the previous webinar. So it should be working. Slot capacity is negative. How is that fixed? The capacity goes negative essentially when extra returning children have been added, and that means that the total spots available are now less than the number of slots to give away. So you got to get some kids out of the count. In most cases, that's because some of the offered children aren't actually enrolled. If they are, if the count of children is correct, but the number of slots is negative anyway, you just need to increase the number of slots. So if it says you have 30 kids enrolled, but there's only 20 slots available, so there's negative 10, just change the slots to 30. However, if the count is right, that probably means that children who are on the waiting list or children who are in the recruitment module have offers but didn't come. And if that's the case, those offers need to be released. So you need to go into their file, or not into their file, go to the recruitment list or the waiting list, depending on where they are, and decline the enrollment, decline the offer. And that's why I really wanted to get this manual out to you today. We are going to send it out tomorrow. There are specific visual instructions from COPA about how to decline an offer and where to find them. So I think you'll find that very helpful. I was hoping to attach it here, but like I said, with technical problems. Let me see a couple more here. Is a PowerPoint for this webinar available? Yes. We are going to send this out in tomorrow's CSD update, and you will receive it as well as the manual. Okay. Now is a good one. Do I have that right now? Hold on. The question is, can you repeat how to customize the waiting list? This is going to be easier just to show you than tell you. So just bear with me a minute, but this is important, I think, to take a small detour. Many reports in COPA now have a customized link. Which means you can pick which fields you are looking at. So there are often more options than can fit on a screen. So here's the waiting list. I'm going to go to my fake agency. I'm not sure that. Okay, so I'm looking at an agency here. It's not real, obviously. So here is the customized link. It's up above the main report, and you decide which fields that you want. So you can remove income status so it doesn't annoy you by telling you all your children are over income, and then go instead and mark income as percentage of FTL. Then you just hit filter. And now we've got the new field, and this gives you a percentage. So instead of saying 25% over income, it will say 125% federal poverty. And since the limit for PFA is 200, you should be able to enroll them. Okay. Oh, another thing. We have a partner site with an agency. We now have PFA and PI and need admin access. At the end of this presentation, there will be my email address. Just send me an email and tell me, give me the username that you need to have as a site administrator, and I'll work on that today. Okay. Let me get out of COPA. Okay. Now again, you can, I said you can, you should in the future set up your slot matrix as needed. So this is not a piece where you should do this once and then never look at it again. For real, your slots will go negative and you'll have difficulty enrolling children just because the children come, children go, the situation changes. So you need to have a plan here. I would say right now there's not a lot for next year, but for right now, I would look at the matrix every 2 weeks, the next month, and then after that, you would look at it at least weekly and make sure that it's correct and you don't need to choose them. You can move vacant slots around easily. You can move slots from bucket 1 to bucket 4 to bucket 2. You just change the numbers and hit submit as long as there's room for them. The problem is that the problem comes in when you have applicants. So once an offer is made in a bucket, so let's say you have 3 bucket 3 offers, you can't change the number of slots there to 2 because you already have offers. And that again would make three offers for 2 slots, which would be negative. So before you could do something like that, you would have to decline one of the offers. Okay. Now, once this has happened, you set it up, we go live. The next question is how to find your applicants. And I harp on this again. I've said this many times, and some of you are really bored right now. Like, why is he doing this again? But people still contact me and say, I looked on the family recruitment list and I didn't see them. It's like this story where the guy goes to the doctor and says, doctor, hurts when I do this. And the doctor says, stop doing that. You can't find them on the family recruitment list. That's why we have report 1150. Look at report 1150. It's indexed by child. The problem with the family recruitment list is it's indexed by parent. It's like the same report. We added a link this year, so when you're in the recruitment section of COPA, you can see where it says 1150. You don't have to go over the reports. You can get there directly from the recruitment section. You do need to filter it. This is another one where it's customizable because there are like dozens of possible things to include on the report. So I have put memorized reports in there. One of them that I use a lot is allocation status. I think that's my default. There was already a summer recruitment. And that one is interesting because when you look at the report, the fields on there have family address, family phone number, email address, so that you can contact anyone who's got an offer. You don't need to, I'm not going to show that to you right now because it would be live data. Okay. So the report defaults to current year. Often it does. If you've memorized your own report, then it'll remember whatever you defaulted it to. But if you don't do that, it may default to current year, so you need to make sure it's set to next year if you're looking for your next year applicants. You can't see them all in the same place right now. So when you do that, it will show you the children. You see you got the desired agency, first agency, second agency, whether you've got an offer, decline, it's just got the status here. This is my allocation status report. So one of the memorized reports there. So I find it pretty useful. But you can set up your own as well. There again, this is what I'm talking about, summer recruitment. So we've blocked these out, but here you go. You see the when you run this report, you get a name, you get an email, you get phone, mobile phone. So even though when a family enters the application, they get a message that tells them to call you, you don't have to wait for that. And I find that best practice is the other way around. Look at this report. You've got their name, you see their phone number, just call them and say, you apply, I see you're offered a spot. When would you like to come in? So that way you you don't lose them because they got distracted and didn't come around. Maybe the email didn't get to them or something. Just you've got the opportunity to take control of that and recruit them. So do it. Okay, another one, way to track this report 975 is a quick overview. It's not, here we go, we've got, you know, again, it's fake data, obviously, teddy bear, Yogi Bear, and so, but if you look at this, you will see it's got a list of who's returning and a list of who's waiting, as well as offers. This one didn't have offers because it's a fake site on the beta room, the beta site, so we didn't force any offers when we did it. But if you look at this, you'll see, you know, on the live site, you'll get who's got an offer, who's returning, who's waiting, and doesn't have an offer. And that's important because you look at this and you see children with offers and say, I have no idea who that is. I've never heard of that person. That's when you call them and say, are you still interested? If they're not, then you decline the offer. And if they are, then you have them come in. But either way, people hanging out with an offer and never showing up is one reason we get negative buckets. 975S is also particularly with a multi-site agency. It'll just give you statistics without names. Again, the blue underlined things are links. You can then go in there and see who they are. But this will just tell you we've got this many slots, got this many offers, this many children returning, just to figure out where you are and how many slots you still have open. It gives you an idea of who's planning to come in the fall at this point. Okay, a question here about a new site that just came on with Head Start and PFA in December, and then children are enrolled there but don't have offers. Yeah, because we started the application for the 1920 year last spring, and we actually made initial placement all the way back on May 30th, 2019. New sites that were added in December were not added to the current year matrix. And the reason for that is that we did not have capacity to train them and bring them on board. We were still doing much more basic stuff, curriculum stuff, how to enroll children, and so on. So we had to ease that in. The new sites from December should be, and I believe we've been through them all, and they will be on the fall matrix. So you can set up next year slots for any of the new sites, and people can apply to those online and get enrolled as of September. But they're not getting offers for this current year because it was already half over, and we were already working on the next year application when they came on board. Okay. So in the available slot box, what does the negative number mean? See, that's what I'm trying to talk about with the negatives. That's bad. That means there are, you have offers and returning children that add up to more than your capacity. So it means you have too many kids. Why is that? Probably some of the children with offers did not come, or some of the children may be marked returning on the waiting list, or possibly the number of available slots is wrong. Either way, that needs to be cleaned up. So you either need to change the number of slots you're offering or figure out which children with offers did not have, or did not come, didn't show up, and are not actually participating, and then decline those offers. And again, we're sending that out, so you should get that tomorrow. You'll see how to decline them in the manual. Okay. Okay. No, I see. Oh, somebody said disregarded. I want to point it out. Anyway, yes, when you go to the page right now, you should be careful about this because it's kind of, because we're still operating in the 19 to 20 year, when you look at the slot matrix right now, when you first log in, it's going to say current year. You've got to pull it down to next year. You do have current year slots set up, but that does not roll over to next year. So you had to set them up again because your number of returning children are different, and because of that, the number of next year will also need to be set up. So between now and September 8th, you'll have 2 sets of slots to deal with. When we roll over to next year, current year 2019 to 2020 will disappear. You'll never see it again. Some ways that's a good thing. Yeah, here was the next slide. Make sure when you go into all of these reports that you're looking at next year, because in the current environment, we have this year and next year's slot. Okay, so here's the thing is this, we've had a couple issues with this, for people not getting that difference between the current and next year application. So please, hopefully this will only be a week or two, and then we'll be moving on. But for the time being, because this application is for next year, and nobody in the entire city has been offered a slot for next year yet. We haven't even set them up. We don't even know how many there are. So nobody's been given an offer. So don't convert anyone yet from recruitment to regular COPA files. Leave them on the recruitment list until we run placement, because then we're going to look at everybody in order of eligibility and make offers. So the children with the most points get an offer first, and then you go down the list. Now, once a family has an offer at your site, then you can go ahead and contact them and convert them and bring them in and verify their eligibility. I say bring them in. Again, it's 2020. You can probably do that over the phone or have them mail things or do a Zoom session. So even though, for example, Head Start performance standards say you should have an in-person interview, you know, it's 2020, do what you got to do to be safe. So they're being flexible about that, but we do need to do that somehow, verify their eligibility, and then you can go ahead and move them to your waiting list. And it's a waiting list, but with an offer. So they're occupying a spot next year, and they're there and ready for when we roll over. Okay, this is not changed. We have the Universal Help Desk system. If you need help enrolling, please start a ticket. As we are social distancing and working from home and scattered to the wind, the ticket system is the only way that we can keep track of what's been done and what isn't. So, you know, that's the system that we use. If you need to log in, that was Latasha. You may have heard that, much to my great horror, Latasha is no longer with us. She has moved on to bigger and better things. So send that on to me, I guess, right now, and I will get someone from IT to add you in there. There might be a wait to get added to the system just because we are working out our internal system, but we will take care of it. Okay, and this is me. I've removed my phone number there because I'm not in the office. But this is the way to get hold of me. Send me an email, any further questions, and I will make it happen. So that's what we have today. Again, we will be sending this deck out, as well as a manual that's got a little more step-by-step for various stages of enrollment using the recruitment system. It's got a page that does talk about the things I've just gone over, how to set up the slot matrix. So as I said, the difficult piece here is information, right? Here, let me look at you. I can't see you, but I can pretend that I do. The difficult thing here is information. It's easy. You mark the box that says returning, you put the slots in, there you go. But you need to figure that out. Who's coming back? How many slots are going to offer? So I know that's the hard part. Again, if under current circumstances you can't tell, assume your families are coming back and that your classrooms are going to be open. And then if they're not, we will provide guidance. We're all in this together. We're aware of the situation. It's difficult for everybody, but we're going to get through it. I didn't think earlier in the year that we'd be as far as we are now. The app is up and running. We have applicants. We're going to do this. It's going okay. Thanks for everybody who's been on this already. And for you guys that already did setting these up and are looking at me like, why did I just spend an hour doing this? But for the rest of you, follow the example, let's get it done. And as always, thank you very much for everything that you do. Again, I've got to get out of here. If you have any further questions, feel free to contact me. I'll be checking my email by around 3, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. So have a lovely Tuesday. I think we set this up for an hour and a half or 2 hours. So I'm going to let you go early. You know this stuff. We did it last year. Thanks, everybody.